All right. Wow, a lot of speakers, very diverse fields. Now, our last one is coming from a completely separate part of the world and a completely different field. Um, I'm excited to introduce you to Brenda. Brenda is coming to us all the way from Iraq right now, and I'm just going to introduce her as they're putting her up in the. Hello, Brenda. Good to see you.
Hi, so good to be here. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. All right. So I am excited to introduce everybody to Brenda. I actually, for some reason, don't have your bio here. So what I'm going to do is actually let you introduce yourself. I know that she's working for trauma restorative yoga in Iraq, and she's been a trainer for a couple of years. But Brenda, take us away. What do we need to know about you and how remarkable you are right now?
Okay, thank you. Really happy to be here with you and with all of the people here in this really sacred container. I appreciate the opportunity, especially to speak about purpose, because what is more important than feeling alive in our bodies and feeling like we're living on purpose, right? So, hearing from all these different people today, I think I speak for probably all of us. Anyone who's coming here seeking purpose, that we appreciate you and you for showing up.
Oh,
So
thank you, Brenda.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my name's Brenda Hershey. I am tuning in from Iraqi Kurdistan, so really far up north near the Turkish border and near Syria. And I'm originally from Ohio, from a small rural town. And I studied international relations, community development, and ended up finishing my master's in Greece, where I got a master's in community development. My thesis was in trauma-informed community development in refugee camps. So that, along with my passion for helping people who've experienced traumas in different ways, now using mind body therapies has really been my drive and is what my purpose work is centered around. So today I'll talk to you a little bit about how I've gotten here. I'm an expert in nothing but my own experience, so I'll share about that and hopefully provide some different bits of valuable content that can help and guide you in seeking your purpose and help make the tough decisions a little bit easier.
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful introduction of yourself. It's so you're in Iraq, which is crazy because there's a lot of we were just talking, I don't know if you heard with Todd about all of these presuppositions that we have about going to countries. I mean, even for some people going to like Nicaragua is a really big jump, and you're all the way in Iraq. So what brought you there, and what exactly are you doing?
So as I mentioned, I grew up in a rural village in Ohio, and so it's been quite a journey coming here, quite a wild ride. Uh, I think experience by experience, I realized that I create my own reality. So a lot of the positions I've had, work-wise, a lot of the experiences I've had internationally, I created myself. Like they literally didn't exist before I made it happen. I pursued it and brought these visions to life. So I think you're a fan of Abraham Hicks. I saw a quote on your website. So, so I really believe that we're on the leading edge of thought. Like we are creating this new reality. We have that ability. It's just understanding just how impactful we can be in the day to day and trying to figure out, like trying to digest what that even means. So it's been a journey of doing that. I also feel like a big part of uh, my growth to here, I attribute to my dad who died a few years ago. And that catapulted me even further into pursuing my purpose and taking these risks that I felt intuitively really were aligned with what I am here to do, but the rest of the world thought were super crazy. So he never his approach to parenting, he raised me and he was kind of hands off. He would never tell me what to do. He would guide me. So he'd allow me to like make mistakes even when he knew it was going to be a mistake. And and just to be a guide, which really affirmed my intuition, allowed me to figure out like what, because we have to make mistakes. We have to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable and feel what it feels like to not get it right and still be okay, and feel the fulfillment of when we, you know, can keep going and get it right and see what that feels like, and then build this trust within ourselves. So I feel like as we're seeking purpose, it's just a continuous journey of that.
Right.
And so
It's amazing that you've gotten all the way over that. I mean, what a remarkable place to be bringing forward your purpose and, you know, and making an impact in the world. Now you're working with a pretty interesting side of the spectrum of conflict right now. You're working a lot with people who are experienced or have experienced pretty severe traumas, right? You're working in refugee camps, and you're primarily working with women, for what I remember, right? And
women and children. Yeah.
Women and children. So when you're on this side, you know, and your body has experienced this from a pretty deep level of stress and overwhelm, what is it that you do with the people that you're teaching to help bring them into connection with themselves as they're going through these very intense experiences coming out of like literal wars, right?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And it also answers the second part of your first question. So what I'm doing here is I'm the managing director of TRI Global. TRI stands for Trauma Recovery Yoga. And it's a mind-body method that helps in both recovering from trauma, any trauma, and helps build resilience simultaneously. So the foundation of it, to kind of simplify it, is self-regulation for resilience, which consists of these 4 different tools. Orientation, so finding yourself in your space. Grounding, just noticing your connection to the ground. Centering, like bringing that energy back in, finding your center, because a lot of times we dissociate. And then breath, which is, you know, the quickest, most effective way to calm the body's stress response system. It's like the remote control of the nervous system. So you can literally, you know, be in a super stressed state, and within like 3 belly breaths time, totally change the trajectory of how you feel. So these 4 pieces, they're really simple, but they're really powerful, especially when you actively practice them. And it's the foundation of all of our practices. So I'm teaching different trauma recovery yoga classes to women and children here. As you mentioned, they're in refugee and IDP camps. The Yazidi population here, they're survivors of genocide by ISIS in 2014. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of these displaced populations here. We also have a large Syrian refugee population. So the method is, you hear yoga, and a lot of people might think different things, but it's non-spiritual, and it's yoga for everyone. It's basic, it's rooted in choice, and it's all based in science and psychology. So simply put, it's been really, like, the response we've gotten here so far has been incredible. Like, people are really curious, from mental health professionals to the refugees and Yazidis themselves. They want more. I'm also, another piece of this is I'm doing a research study. I completed the first 8-week intervention with survivors of genocide and local humanitarians. And the impact, so over 8 weeks, I taught 1 class per week, and the impact on their mental and physical trauma symptoms and their resilience levels and heart rate variability were like incredible. So it really does work. It's rooted in self-regulation for resilience, so SRR, just these really basic tools to help reconnect the mind and body is essentially what we're doing. So just moving mindfully with our breath and allowing them to notice. We're practicing mindfulness, which is just a fancy word for noticing what's happening in their mind, their body, and kind of coming back online, essentially.
Right. After experiences like that, it's really important. I want to say really quick, this is like the 10th time breath has been mentioned today as something that is so important when you're connecting to yourself and you're getting out of stress. Like, I guess we can't
Mhm.
really, say this enough, that breath is so important, right? Now, what's interesting is that you're actually seeing results come from this. And I mean, I studied a master's, I told you, in international relations and diplomacy.
Mhm.
And so the idea that you're bringing yoga to refugees and to internationally displaced persons is like,
Mhm.
my two worlds coming together. This is incredible because that's so much support going to areas of the world that have experienced like horrible, horrible things for the body, or
Mhm.
very destructive things, I should say,
Yeah, they
right?
need it the most, right?
Yeah, and so that you're there
Yeah.
doing that is very brave. So somebody doesn't get there, making, typically, it's not an easy decision to make, to go all the way to Iraq. So what was it that allowed you to make such a kind of a scary decision? You don't know what's on the other side. There's a lot of hearsay about how dangerous Iraq is.
For
So
sure.
what was it that allowed you in your mind to make that decision?
Mm. Yeah, there are a couple points here that continue to guide me as I make these types of decisions. And one of them being one of the characteristics that has been ongoing in this journey for me is feeling like I'm torn in two directions. I feel this really intense contradiction between what my heart and my gut tell me and what the rest of the world is telling me to do, including my family, like people who love me. So I, since I was a child, I remember this really clearly, like being pulled in two directions. Like what I think I should do doesn't seem like the safe or secure route. So there's no like easy, it just takes experience. It takes jumping without knowing what the ground looks like. I think Todd before was saying jumping off the cliff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
you just
metaphorical
have to
cliff.
jump and you have to trust. And when you do that one time, and it's really scary, but then it turns out to be the most fulfilling thing that could have happened, you reaffirm for yourself that, okay, like you can trust your gut, you can trust your intuition, like it's okay to try that again. And I have to remind myself, even now, like that's happened so many times now, like I've made plenty of risky, like seemingly really risky decisions, like left a stable job to pursue something that was more purpose driven. uh, I just did that like 5 months ago, again, here in Iraq, you know? So, especially doing it abroad. Uh, and to start Try Global, to really launch it, it's really risky. And imagine like just recently being offered a really cushy job here, with health insurance and a solid income and all of this, but being so firmly rooted and grounded in knowing like if you just can quiet the mind and quiet the world around you and sit and just ask yourself like what's what's the right decision here for me, what's something only I could do, that other job anyone could do it, but this is the one chance we get. If I'm the character in my story, this is another great tool I use really often, like stepping outside of yourself and observing your life like a movie. You're the main character. So what would you want that character to do? Would you want them to take the safe route? That's a really boring movie. Like it's different when we're in it and we're experiencing it and we just want the safety and want to be comfortable. But recently I heard if you want to pioneer the change in consciousness, you will certainly not be comfortable with the consciousness that already exists. So expect and accept discomfort and really lean into it. And once you start to build that trust within yourself, once you make one scary decision and realize, oh, that was okay, that paid off, and then you do it again and again, you start to build this safety within yourself. And then you can navigate the turmoil that's happening around you and still be in alignment with what matters to you most. So
Right. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, as I'm going to reiterate what Sanchez says in the chat, life is a roller coaster, right? It's up and down. And the more you step into, action, right, and jumping off that cliff, it becomes almost normal, not normal, but easier for you to jump off that cliff again and to take that risk, because what we're doing is we're actually learning how to adapt, right? We're learning how to move when things don't go the way we want to, which I'm sure you've done a lot of over there since you've been in Iraq. What you said, you've been there, I think you told me 2 years now,
Yeah.
which is a pretty long time to be in such an environment. So I'm curious, is it what have the biggest challenges been for you over there in an environment that is not the most constructive and empowering to an individual wanting to live on the terms of their own purpose? What have been the biggest challenges?
One that is coming to mind is in my most recent job with a local organization. So it was a Kurdish organization. I was managing a team, and my philosophy is, because one of the ways to stay on route to your purpose and to feel like to continue to align with it and not get too far off track is to have an understanding of your why. That's what your purpose is, your bigger why. Why are you here? Why do you exist? What do you have specifically that no one else has? And not in this like kind of overwhelming way, but maybe brainstorming that and then reminding yourself. So like each time before I go visit beneficiaries here, like in camps, or before I teach a yoga class, I just set an intention to like get out of my own way and allow whatever's supposed to come through me today to come through me, and to remind myself of my why. So that was really my approach in this last job as a team leader. We were working with Syrian refugees mainly, helping them start and expand small businesses. And it was a challenge because that's not the collective energy here. Like my whole experience here has really been trailblazing. It's creating what does not exist yet. And so I guess as I'm saying this out loud, everything has been preparing me for this, because there's a lot to it. There are a lot of components, especially culturally, that come up that you have to navigate. So in this last position, for example, I was managing a team, and I'm very democratic. Let's brainstorm together. Let's figure out what's best for everyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's really not the style here. So it's much more like hierarchical based in hierarchy. And so different things like this. So staying true to my philosophy, adjusting here and there, like as is appropriate, but knowing when to set boundaries, when to, where there's no flexibility, where you have to stay strong in that. So that's one example.
Of your big challenges. Well, and I can imagine, so it sounds like the cultural differences are also a pretty big part over there in terms, like you said, the hierarchy, and being able to, having to adapt to that, having to kind of shift and bend. So when you come up against these communities or these environments that are very strong, it's kind of like a big crust, how do you know where to bend and adapt, and where to stand strong in what you believe in, what you're actually there to do? Like, what is the difference between those two for you?
That's a good question. I think when I can quiet the mind, so I often, like what this looks like for me, it's a process of getting out of my head and dropping into my heart. Because the brain can go and go, and your thoughts can really drive you. I've learned over time that when I can quiet the mind and drop into my heart and kind of feel into the situation, it might not look like what I had planned. It usually doesn't. Then that usually guides me. Again, it's just building your relationship with your intuition, like feeling into what is appropriate for the situation. There are times where, for example, with trauma recovery yoga, where like the trauma-informed care here, interestingly, is not as developed in my experience as what we know in the West. They have a very different idea. Yeah, like for us, for example, we're not going to touch anyone here. You know, it's a bit more, and it kind of goes like culturally, it's more
Hands-on. Yeah.
flexible, more hands-on. Yeah. So there are certain things like this where, in my experience, if in a trauma-informed setting with people who have experienced these like major traumas, you kind of have to draw a line and be like, I totally see where you're coming from. Let's try it this way because of this. And usually they'll, you know, they get it. And it can be more of a teaching moment in that sense. I try not to like, you know, step out of line. Otherwise, like, you know, as a white girl coming to teach yoga, so to know the difference, it's a practice, but yeah, it's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing then is it's really about connecting to yourself and knowing, okay, what are my boundaries? Getting really clear on what your boundaries are for you and what's important. And then also seeing, okay, what am I flexible on that I thought was so important to me before? Is that really important to me? And it's seeing, is that in my boundaries or not? Right.
Exactly.
And so in these spaces where you have victims of trauma or people who have experienced trauma, I guess you get some pretty crazy, what we would call crazy scenarios, because in our day-to-day life here, you know, in the West, in the US, right, we don't have that on such a high level. We of course have trauma like everywhere, but it's on such a different level. But this applies to people here, right, that have traumas from their childhood that we most likely all do, right, whether we know it or not. And so getting clear on those boundaries is so important, which is amazing. So I'm curious, what are some of the boundaries that you've had to put while you've been there that you didn't know you would have had to before, right?
Yeah, certainly. The most prominent one is probably here. It goes again with this experience at the local organization. I was the only expat at this organization, the only foreigner. So they were really adaptable. They were fantastic, like great people. I'll just put that out there. But these cultural differences, like being talked down to or being kind of ordered to do things, like most people here, they'll just take those, they'll just like obey in a sense. They'll just do what they're told, you know, be safe, not cause any issues, which is interesting because that was kind of a childhood, like something I had to work through, was not people pleasing and not just doing what you're told, but asking questions and like, you know, this kind of thing. So it's funny because I feel like on this journey of pursuing purpose, like navigating what that is for you, you're always being tested. Every opportunity, every challenge is an opportunity and is a test in some sense. And they just continue to progress, right? So this was manifested for me to pass this test of setting boundaries and being like, hey, I understand that, you know, generally like this is a totally fine way to do things. I don't appreciate though, like the tone or whatever, you know, just staying rooted in your boundaries that way, I guess.
Right. To know that those challenging moments are your opportunities as well is huge, which we've been reverberating throughout our conversations today in the interviews. Is we can't say enough, right? Yeah. And that's not only the mind of an entrepreneur, right? This is the mind of somebody who wants to be in connection with their self and what they actually want to do in this world. So I guess at our core, we should all be learning entrepreneurship, right? Because this is so important to living life on our own terms, right?
Absolutely. Like having a growth mindset for me has been also one of the main pillars that continues to guide me on this journey. So knowing what my personal philosophy is, that everything is always working out for me. Even when I miss the bus or a plane, or I go through a bad breakup or lose a job or whatever, everything is always working out for me. And it can be hard, like to fully believe that sometimes, like depending on what your experiences are, because it's something to my core that I live by that. I've just believed it since the moment I heard it. It made sense. But when I'm working with people here who have survived genocide, who've lost all of their family and friends, and who, people from Syria, we all know what's happening in Syria, and it's just ongoing. So to not talk at these people, but to just share tools with them, and to be the change, to just be. Actually, that's something about purpose I think is really worth mentioning, is one of the myths. Okay, so can I bring up my major myth with purpose?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So I feel like we have this idea that your purpose, living your dream, is something in the future. Like, if you look around you right now, it's really possible that you're not experiencing it right now. So it must be in the future, right? Eckhart Tolle in A New Earth, which I highly recommend to anyone. It's like my Bible. He describes how, okay, so what we typically imagine as purpose is our outer purpose. It's the doing, it's what you accomplish, it's you serving others. It's what we typically imagine. But we're missing the other really foundational piece of this, which is your inner purpose. And your inner purpose is you being aligned with the present moment. So whether you're watering your plant or walking your dog or doing the dishes, whatever you're doing, to just be in that moment and just be there, not resisting. And so when you can have both of these things, when you can align the inner and the outer, that's when you feel that you are living a purposeful life. He calls it awakened doing. I like to think of it as like inspired action, so just waking up in the morning and being excited to create and to share and to connect. So the biggest myth is that it's something in the future, but really, like with these two pieces, with this kind of expanded perspective, I feel like we can really bring it into the now, and that in itself will make these seemingly really hard decisions much easier.
That's amazing. Yeah, because we do live in this world that is outside of us, and so bringing that together is the key. So that's amazing. Now, wrapping it up here, I'm curious, what is your call to action? I know you're offering something else as well, so I'm going to let you take it away here because it's pretty cool what you're doing.
Cool. Yes. So right now we're teaching community classes. We're finishing up this research with trauma recovery yoga here in Iraq. And we are also facilitating trainings for humanitarians. And in March, we have our very first teacher training. It's 20 hours, and we just launched today a fundraiser to sponsor 10 displaced individuals. So there'll be Yazidis and Syrian refugees, to sponsor them to take this training and to undergo ongoing mentorship, to be prepared and confident to teach the classes in their community. So I love teaching the class. It's a great experience for all, I think, but it's not sustainable. And we're missing a major opportunity to have these locals teach the classes themselves. So just launched this fundraiser. I encourage you to check it out. If you can donate, it'd be amazing. If you can't, to share it. It's a great cause. It's not, we're really passing the mic. We're not giving people a voice, but we're building systems of empowerment, and that will turn into jobs for them even. So
that's amazing. I really love this one. So pay it forward, guys, whether you join and actually see what she's doing in one of her try classes, or you go and you pay this fundraiser for, donate to it, tell your friends. This is pretty incredible work, what Brenda's doing over there. And it's hard work. It's definitely not, your typical walk in the park or your typical 9-to-5 job even. This is hard. And so I'm really excited to share this, and I really want to thank you, Brenda, for taking the time to bring this forward and to do the work that you're doing over there, because it's pretty amazing to talk to you about it and to hear what you're doing. So Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And one last note, people often ask me like how I can be here in Iraq, where like we have a small kerosene heater and it's freezing. It's like 30 degrees, and electricity isn't stable and water's not clean and all of these things. And I think when you find your purpose and when you pursue it, it makes things like this make sense for you. It won't make sense to anyone else, not the people here, not the people there, like to no one but you. So just believe in yourself, continue to build that relationship with your intuition, and know that we need you. We each have a responsibility to fulfill our purpose. So thank you so
Brenda.
much for
You're
having
definitely
me.
walking your talk. So I love it. You're inspiring. You're so inspiring.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, have a lovely, I guess it's time for bed for you. So wishing you a lovely night's sleep, and I'll be catching you very soon. I'll be there next week at your tri class.
Yes, and please join me for the tri class, guys. It's worth experiencing. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Yeah, of course. All right. Bye, Brenda.
Take care.
Thanks.